Oh, hi brothers and sisters, here for another video on Shebna. And the reason why I think Shebna is a female, and like I say, you don't have to agree with my conclusions, but we're finding some interesting details here, and so I thought I'd share them with you. And so we see the accusation made against, it's the blaspheming against the Holy One. And that Holy One, of course, in the New Testament, they say the Holy Spirit. You blaspheme the Holy Spirit. They blasphemed her a long time ago in the Old Testament, but nobody can be bothered to study what exactly that means to blaspheme the Holy Spirit. But in places like 2 Kings, or 1 Kings, is it 1 Kings or 2 Kings 19? And then you get that same repeat chapter in Isaiah 37. And Isaiah 36 is also part of the story of Sennacherib accusing her. And this is the one where we begin to understand that there's a lot more going on than they have told us, that has been studied. They simply won't admit to it. But here is Sennacherib, and we'll eventually get to the seat of glory, because I'm pretty sure in this chapter we get Eliakim. We get Shebna in this chapter. So in Isaiah 36, now it came to pass that in the 14th year of King Hezekiah. Now King Hezekiah was said to be one of the best kings of Judah, one of the most righteous kings of Judah. Yet I found it perplexing that in Micah 1:1 he is lumped together with two other wicked kings. So I believe there was a lot of conniving going on behind the scenes. And I think Shebna was part of that in the sense that she got backstabbed. And I still believe that her name, Seat of Beauty, is going to link us to the sitting glory at that time. And so now it came to pass in the 14th year of King of Hezekiah that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came up against all the defense cities of Judah and took them. And the king of Assyria sent Rabshakeh from Lachish. Now remember, Lachish was in the territory of Dan. So at this point, King Hezekiah had already taken control of the north kingdom. So, and from Lachish to Jerusalem, unto King Hezekiah, he sends Rabshakeh from Lachish to Jerusalem unto King Hezekiah with a great army. Now this is the kicker, that we don't understand these minor details. We just read them and go, whatever. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool, by the road to the fuller's field. Now we discovered the launderer's field, where the women went up and laundered the clothing, because the Holy Spirit is responsible for keeping the body washed clean. The women are allegorical to the spirit in the world, in the land, which becomes a harlot bound at the feet of a religious lion idol. And we begin to see when we study this exactly how that was beginning to happen. If we pay attention and we actually want to think a little bit on these things, instead of listening to the end story of man as God, your head, your ruler, and he died to wash his bride clean, and you wives, women, must bow down. The bride must bow down at his feet and worship him, right? Well, that was all lies in the beginning. God said, you saw no image, make no image. God was a God of fairness, truth, and equity. God did not want to put forth an image and have that image worshipped and bowed. So she was fair in the beginning. She was very fair. And she says, so make no image. Well, we end up with an image. And we're going to show you how they began to mold that image into this male idol that we see in the end of days, which is representative, of course, of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. He's telling you something there. In Daniel 2 or 3, I can never remember which chapter, of a man standing, which gets smashed. The toes get smashed by the stone representing these daughters reborn in the land, and brings that idol down of a man as your Lord and God in your head, and who rules all things. He was never intended to be your ruler, and he's certainly not God as he would have you believe when we get studying it, and certainly not the glory, which is what they're trying to place upon Christ and say, well, Christ is your glory, Christ is your God, Christ is the one that led you out of Egypt. That they literally say that in some of the commentaries. He did not. We identified the glory that led the nation of Israel out of the land of Egypt, out of this idolatrous land of Egypt, as the presence of God. Standing in that presence of God was the daughters of Israel inside of the nation of Israel, with a more specific one who had came from above, and these women were considered her scepter in the way that she would rule through. And she was the real power that, if we look at Moses as being a real true man standing, and not just the one that was drawn out of the water, meaning her herself, and we take it that it was a man, she would have been the power standing to his right hand. And then we get that understanding in Job 40, where the Lord said, "Hast thou an arm like unto God?" A right arm like unto God. And she's referencing her daughters. My daughters, she's saying, are my inheritance that I rule through. And she says, this is how the blaspheming and the tearing down of it came about. So we're going to look at it. And he stood by the conduit of the upper pool. It doesn't say the lower pool. So where did we discover was really the upper pool in reference? The upper pool is in reference to Beth Horon, upper Beth Horon, and there is lower Beth Horon as well, that Shira built, yes, along with Uzin Shira, or Uzin Shira, which means listen to your kinswoman, or hear your kinswoman. And so he stood by the upper pool, which would have been where? In the territory of Ephraim. She was said to be a daughter of Ephraim, so her territory would have fell in Ephraim. Now it's interesting to understand, as you begin to read the references of Beth Horon, its location literally changes. It literally moves from Ephraim, whose territory it should have been in, to Benjamin's, and then into Judah's. So actually what we saw there was them changing the flow of the upper pool, or as we discovered, they really cut off its flow altogether, which was the daughters of Israel, representing the key of David flowing like a living water from the upper house. And that upper house was the house in the forest of Lebanon, represented by the upper pool, where the cleansing waters of the Holy One would have flowed from. So here he's took control of the upper pool, and he's standing by the conduit of the upper pool in the highway of the fuller's field, where these women would have went and washed the clothing out washed the wool. That's right. It was their job to do that. And this is important because we get the reference to the fuller's soap as well, or the launderer's soap in Malachi. Is it Malachi chapter 3? And again, they want to say, he will come to his temple. No, she will come to her temple. It's her. And it says, who can stand in the day when she appears with the fuller's soap, right? Who can stand in that day? So we get all those references right inside of there, but most of the time I would read this years and years ago, and I'd just bypass it. It's like, yeah, kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of detail, too much to really be understood by me. And lo and behold, years later in study, there is a way that the Spirit does lead us. So, verse 3, then came forth unto him Eliakim, Hilkiah's son, which was over the house. Now remember, and Shebna the scribe. Now we read in Isaiah 22 where Shebna gets dethroned. And she really did get dethroned, and it is she. And she got dethroned from off of the seat of beauty. That is the meaning of Shebna's name, the seat of beauty. Now we're going to take a closer look at that in a minute, if we get through this. So the scribe, Shebna the scribe, because she really was the one over the house. So this would have been Hezekiah's house, right? And we're coming up against Sennacherib, who's coming in on Hezekiah. And we've seen the deposing, am I using the right word, of Shebna to the second position, and Eliakim exalted over that seat of beauty, which is the Shekinah glory sitting as wisdom. And we'll see that in some words in a minute. So in Shebna the scribe, and Joah, Asaph, son, the recorder. I don't think it was a son. We're not going to debate that right now. We're not going to argue it. But Asaph the gatherer will lead you to the female assembler, which they want to put as a nom de plume, like written by a man playing a woman. No, it was a woman. It is the female assembler, she that gathers the Proverbs. And it's stated that Shebna would be the one responsible for restoring her mother's house back to her. Now, they've got it that she was addressing Eliakim here, the one that did take over Hezekiah's house. It was Shebna, really, who was the one that sat on that. And then it's interesting that she gets deposed right at a time when we get a whole bunch of blasphemy against the Holy One, okay? So this is very interesting detail. I say, sayest thou, but they are but vain words. I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust, that thou rebellest against me? So I say that your strategy and your military preparedness are mere words. So this, I believe, is Sennacherib saying this to Hezekiah. Lo, thou trusted in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt. So Hezekiah was placing faith in the Pharaoh of Egypt to help deliver him. All right? Now remember, we've got another storyline that we're tracking down here with really what was going on. Because this is what I found, and you don't have to agree with me. I was going to do a separate video on it, but since it's come up in our line of sight, I find the best time to do it is when it comes up in my line of sight. So when you go to Ezekiel 31, do I have it in this list here? Let me see here. It is Ezekiel 31 you'll want to go. Oh, I wish I brought my Bible. I don't have my Bible. We're hitting it there. Okay, so let's go in here. This is probably my best place to find it. So, in Ezekiel 30, all right, let's look at Ezekiel 30, verse 15. Right quick, okay? This is fun. It really is. Okay. So I'm going to parallel that, I think, and then we'll go into 15. Okay. So down we go to verse 15. This is just something that I think you can study yourself. So the Lord is speaking here, and to Pharaoh. This is actually who's in view. But we'll go to verse 15 because there's an interesting point that we want to look at. And I will pour my fury upon sin. It's a capital S. All right? Sin. Now I remember years ago actually hitting on this verse and thinking that that word sin literally meant, oh, God will pour out God's fury on sin. You know, that's what I thought. But let's read it again. And I'll pour out my fury upon sin, the strength of Egypt. And I will cut off the multitude of No. So, N-O, it says capital N-O. So these are locations. So I'm still looking at No. I hope to get a better understanding of it. And I will set fire in Egypt. Sin shall have great pain, and No shall be rent asunder, and Noph shall have distress daily. The interesting thing, they'll say that Sennacherib conquered sin. All right, conquered Egypt. I believe in the next chapter over. Let's just go look at that real quick. And see that we can... Behold, the Assyrian was cedar in Lebanon with fair branches and with a shadowing shroud, and of a high stature, and his top was among the thick boughs. Now, I wanted to do this chapter in a study, separate. And what I understood was that Pharaoh here at this point was being likened to Assyria, the king of Assyria. And God is saying, I'll bring you down, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, just like I brought the Assyrian down. And we go on to how he was admired and all this stuff. I'm still trying to determine the gender and how this really worked itself out. I'm still trying to understand all of that. But this is the understanding that it was the Assyrian that God takes down. And then if we backtrack, there's more to that thought there, and I'm missing it. But sin, what did we discover about that word sin? If you go to Sennacherib, in Wikipedia, what does it say his name meant? Meaning of Sennacherib's name: sin, S-I-N, has replaced the brothers. Now, what was sin? Because we're getting a deeper understanding of the powers of darkness, which is the moon. How they rule earth. They actually rule through the moon, from the powers of darkness, and they rule the false light that way. So we understand the false light is the false religious lie that began to shine upon us and make us dark. We get the Shulamite, so we get the allegorical to the physical realm. But it's really in the spiritual realm that it all took place in. And then we get cast down into the physical realm, and all the rituals that they were playing out takes hold into a physical existence, is how I'm kind of starting to look at it. But she says, look not upon me because I am black. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me the keeper of the vineyard, but my own vineyard have I not kept. What you want to pull out of that is the false light shining upon her. But you see, sin has replaced the brothers. What's the meaning of sin? It means moon. Moon. The powers of darkness replaced the brothers. That's where you get the sons of Belial, the sons of Baal coming into play. So we have sin has replaced the brothers, and now I've totally lost sin here. S-I-N, there it is there. So if you go in on the word, right? Now they'll say, this was named sin before Sennacherib. I don't think so. I'm questioning who the Pharaoh of Egypt was. I'm questioning if Sennacherib wasn't the Pharaoh of Egypt, because it says, my people went down into Egypt. This is Isaiah 52:4, and it says, the Assyrian oppressed them there. So we got a lot going on here. So what did sin mean here in the Hebrew? Well, Pelusium, east frontier city of Egypt, clay, of which is translated clay, dirt, mud. Why are we getting the comparison to clay and dirt and mud? Because we're coming down into a physical existence over everything that's going on and being committed against the Holy One of Israel. And it says, that, what does it say in, is it Ezekiel 38 or Ezekiel 40? The clay, the seal has turned to clay, or the clay has turned to the seal or something. And I'm still looking at that. So there's so much to be understood about this dirt that was going on and being pulled against the Holy One who sat on the seat of beauty as wisdom. And that's why it was called beauty, the seat of beauty. Because wisdom is compared to being more precious and more beautiful than rubies. It's with wisdom that you are able to create and sustain all things. And that wisdom is identified as she who sat as the Shekinah glory on the seat of beauty, who got deposed through these dirty little buggers who were working together to get her deposed off of that throne. And they had accused her, and she didn't know what was going on. She's the only one that a real firm oracle is made against that we see named, literally named in the Bible. And there's more going on, because God also says, I planned this a long time ago. So God saw it coming a long time ago, what was going down. With the accusation of Adam, who accused the spirit of the original covenant. She says, I saw this, I planned it a long time ago. I know what's going on. Lo, thou trustest in the staff of this broken reed on Egypt, wherein if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. So is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all that trust in him. So this is supposedly Sennacherib addressing Hezekiah's faith in the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh of Egypt, who he's in covenant with, who he's got an oath with, his army. So, but if thou say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, is it not, this is interesting, pay attention here, because there's a lot more going on here that we need to work out. Is it not he, she, whose highest places and altars Hezekiah had taken away, and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, ye shall worship before this altar. All right, we're going to understand what that really means. Now, if you hit on it, it's going to say part of what gets took down is the Asherah poles and all of that stuff they go on about. But they take down the image that Moses was instructed to make when the men inside the nation of Israel had gotten poisoned by those serpents that Balaam and Balak has sent in. All right? And so Moses is instructed by the glory who's standing to his right hand, holding her scepter of power. And she says to him, make a branch with a serpent around it. I forget the exact making. Place a bronze serpent on a pole. And tell all who looks to that will live. Now, I have a problem with the animal comparison here. And you're going to see why in a minute, because we're going to go to why we have a problem with that. Because our Lord had a problem with it. So why it was okay for Hezekiah to take these high places down? He's also being accused by Sennacherib, you removed the things that represented your Lord, your glory. Which we know that represented the daughters inside the nation of Israel, that the men inside the nation of Israel, in the wanderings, was turning against as where they received the law of heaven from, their sister's mouth, their neighbor's mouth, in a sense. And they were turning on her because Balaam and Balak was sending women in that were willing to do with these men of Israel something that no other woman was willing to do. And so they go in, and what they begin to say to these men, it's like honey on their tongue. It tickles their ears, makes them feel like gods and kings. And so they begin to turn on the true glory of Israel. All right? And so then Moses is instructed to make this bronze serpent on pole, which becomes known as the I forget the name of it. Let me see. Let me pull this up and see if we can pull the reference up. All right? Should be here in the references. There it is. It's 2 Kings 18:4. And he removed the high places. He shattered the sacred pillars. Now we also identified pillars as representing the feminine, all right, aspect in the Godhead. She. All right? And she is the highest. And what we mean by high, we don't mean she was to be held in high, in loftiness. And that was for your own protection. Though she says, you see no image, you make no image. So these images was a problem to God. You were to have no images. But the fact is, everything that got removed at this point was female. This is the strange thing that you begin to realize as you study more and more. And this began to put the glory in a very tight spot and a very one of anger, where she was coming from a place of great anger at what they were committing against the glory. And so he removed the high places. He shattered the sacred pillars. I got a video on the pillars and how that's all female. Your pillars are identified as female. Rachel had a pillar put on her grave. That's right. Your daughters will be like pillars, polished after the similitude of a palace. The kings would go up and make an oath before the pillars, right? Which is also why Abraham was to cut off his foreskin, because that foreskin represented kings being in covenant with the harlot spirit that would exalt them as gods. So when they went up to a pillar for a king, it usually meant the high lord, and he would promise to keep his oath to the glory of Israel. That's basically what it was meaning, or what I've come to understand it. They cut down the Asherah poles also. Now, yeah, everything we've heard about that is there they practice harlotry there. No, that's what we've understood so far. We're still digging and seeing what more we can understand about that. He also demolished the bronze snake called the Nehushtan that Moses had made. For up to that time, the Israelites had burned incense to it. Now you see, all of these, this is the problem that we get here, were feminine. Every one of these images here are female when we begin to understand. So Hezekiah was just as guilty almost, in many ways, as Shebna, by removing everything feminine. And what did he say? You shall worship before this altar in Judah and in Jerusalem. The male altar. Male. Why do we know that's male? Okay. We're going to find out in a minute. Alright. We're going to go back. We're going to backtrack here and we're going to keep reading. Now therefore give pledges, I pray thee, to my master the king of Assyria, and I will give thee 2,000 horses, if you are able to set riders upon them. He's saying, turn to me. You'll be part of my great army and we'll own everything. Your God ain't going to be able to save you. This is what he's saying. The God that you don't have no trust in to begin with because you tore. Did you not? This is what Sennacherib says to Hezekiah. But if thou say to me, we trust in the Lord our God. We've just identified the Lord our God as female in every aspect. Because of what he did. He went to the high places and he tore, and whose altars Hezekiah has taken away. He took every one of the female altars away, which would have been fine with God had he also removed the male altars. But he didn't. He left the male altars standing. That's what he did. And had taken away and said to Judah and to Jerusalem, ye shall worship before this altar. Okay, we're going to move in a minute. Now therefore give pledges, I pray thee, to my master the king of Assyria, and I will give you 2,000 horses, and you can set riders on them. How then wilt thou turn away the face of one captain of the least of my master's servants, and put thy trust on Egypt for chariots and for horsemen? You say you trust in your Lord and your God, yet you totally tore down all images of what is considered your glory, right? And am I now come up without the Lord against this land to destroy it? Do you see what he's saying here? Is this the accusation that made her so mad? The blasphemy? Have I attacked this land to destroy it without the Lord's approval? He's either accusing her of saying she told him to go up against Hezekiah and destroy Hezekiah, which she may have. There's a test going on here for Hezekiah as well. Or is he saying his Lord is male? This new Lord that they had, this new God that they had created for themselves. Is that what he's blaspheming her with? That my Lord has told me to come up and attack your land. So we're still looking into which it is, because I'm going to stumble on the information eventually. So, have I attacked this land to destroy it without the Lord's approval? The Lord said to me, attack this land and destroy it. Now, here we come with Shebna. Then said Eliakim and Shebna and Joah, and Rabshakeh, speak, I pray thee, unto thy servant in the Syrian language, for we understand it, and speak not to us in the Jews' language, in the ears of the people that are in the wall. But Rabshakeh said, have my master sent me to thy master and to thee to speak these words? Had he not sent me to the men that sit upon the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you? So, I don't know. Sennacherib sounds like he's in the know here. Rabshakeh is saying that you'll eat your own dung. That's the Lord of dung, Baal, the image of Baal standing that they're worshiping at this point, which is the image or the altar where they're instructed to come down and worship to now. Okay, so then Rabshakeh stood, so he says, that you may eat your own dung and drink your own piss. Right? They should know this, that this is what I was sent for. Then Rabshakeh stood and cried with a loud voice in the Jews' language and said, hear ye the words of the great king, the king of Assyria. Thus saith the king, do not let Hezekiah deceive you, for he shall not be able to deliver you. So again, he's accusing the glory of not being able to deliver Hezekiah. Neither let Hezekiah make you trust in the Lord, saying, the Lord will surely deliver us. This is okay. So we've got a possibility here. Either he's saying his Lord is greater, who told him to attack, and that Hezekiah's weak little Lord can't deliver them. Okay, so that's a blasphemy against the Holy One, who is the power at the right hand of mankind. It's a total blasphemy. She's the one that holds the scepter of power. Without her, you have no power. You will die. And so that's the promise that actually gets made. Now, I'd like to go in and read all of this, okay? And we may do it in another video. But because I want to show you Shebna up here, okay? We're going to go to, where is it? Nope. Nope. We're going to go to 2 Samuel 23:8. Now, if you recall in a prior video, when you get understanding the meaning of Shebna's name, what did we find that Shebna's name meant? It meant seat of beauty, right? So if we go to 2 Samuel 23:8, and I looked at this many years ago, so I knew it was here. And the Lord will lodge certain passages in your mind without you really understanding the benefit to knowing these particular passages until it starts to link together. So it really does require patience for the Lord to work in the Lord's time. So 2 Samuel 23:8. These are the names of David's mighty warriors. Josheb-Beshebeth, a Tahachamonite, was chief of the three, and he raised his spear against 800 men who he killed in one encounter. Now, let me see. Let me go back one verse here, just to make sure. Because we get another reference. Now, that ain't the one that I've got up, so we'll go with this right now. Okay, so when we look up his name, Joshua Bessel Habeth, it means to sit, remain, or to dwell. What else sat, remained, and dwelt? Well, that was the Shekinah glory, wasn't it? The Shekinah. Whose way is to the east, it says. Alright, I'm running low here on battery. I'm going to pause you a minute. Just for a moment. Yes. Just for my computer's being mad now. Okay, so we're gonna pause you. Yes. Pause. Okay.